Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Indiana State Police Roadshow. I'm your host, Sergeant John Perrine, the Public Information Officer for the Indiana State Police Indianapolis District. The Roadshow is brought to you each and every week by the Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids, a subsidiary of the State Police Alliance. For more information about our sponsor, visit www.indianasfinest.com. If you are seeing us on YouTube, it's thanks to a great man, Tom Trial. If you have never been to the Indiana State Police YouTube channel, check it out. You can spend hours and hours. Instead of watching TikTok, you can be watching historic state police videos. And so we want to thank Network Indiana for getting us on the radio waves across the great state of Indiana. Eddie Griffith in the booth pushing the buttons for us and helping get our show spread far and wide. And our guest today, all the way from Hamilton County.
Correct.
Not really all the way, but down from Hamilton County is the health education specialist, Jim Ginder. Jim, thanks for coming.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
You know, I can certainly empathize what the last 2.5, 3 years is in the health department industry has been for you. But one program that I'm really interested in that's kind of been through it all is Stop the Bleed training. So let's talk about what is Stop the Bleed training.
Sure. So Stop the Bleed training is about an hour and a half course. And what we do is from the Department of Homeland Security, that's one of the big sponsors, and also the American College of Trauma Surgeons. And what the course does, it teaches individuals how to stop the bleeding. That could be from everything from direct pressure to wound packing to tourniquet as well too. We also talk a little bit about what to look for. If somebody has these severe bleedings, what's the appropriate place for them to go as well too, like if they have a finger amputation. We also talk, as I mentioned, about amputations, puncture wounds, other things. I think everybody should have the course. I think it's a great course. I teach the course at the health department for free. We probably do one course a month as well too. I also certify all the teachers in Hamilton County because that's something that the Department of Education says that there has to be 5 staff members in every building who has the Stop the Bleed certificate as well too.
And that's really, really interesting because we talk about it's one of those things that you never know you need it until you need it. And
very much so.
Kind of some simple concepts, I'm guessing.
It's very easy. I kind of joke about it. I call it my toy class because we have lots of toys that we use. And how I teach it is we use the curriculum, but also I teach a little bit out of the box. And I always say, what could you use at home if you don't have a tourniquet? So we talk about grabbing a tie or doing whatever, and I show them how to make a tourniquet. Or if we don't have things to make a chest seal, so if somebody gets shot in the chest and you need to make a chest seal, what do you have at home that's plastic that you can use to cover that entrance wound and exit wound until EMS gets there? And I think one of the big things that we do and let people know that when that situation occurs, that when law enforcement gets there, a lot of people have this misconception that law enforcement is going to be hanging out with them. And we know that's not true because I also play the role as an EMS person as well. And I tell the students that take it that they may have to be with that patient until that officer or officers declare that scene safe before EMS can come in there. So then we talk about reassessing that person. If you put that tourniquet on and you notice it started bleeding again, what's the next step we need to do as well too until we can get EMS in there to help out as well.
You know, you mentioned tourniquets. I've been with the Indiana State Police for almost 20 years now. And when I came through the academy, our medical part, they talked about tourniquets and things you could use and how to do them. But now we've evolved so much that I carry one on my belt all day, every day.
Right. And fortunately, what happens, unfortunately, because of our military, that's the reason why we do it, because there's a lot of, when you look at Stop the Bleed, a lot of our data comes from the military as well, too. So I've been in EMS since I was 18. So I've been in there for about 30 years or so. And tourniquets were always the last option. Now, if you come up in a situation and you think that direct pressure wound packing is not going to work, you automatically put on a tourniquet and you don't mess with the other 2 options. You just go right to it to get that bleeding under control.
And one question that I always get when we're talking about stopping catastrophic bleeding is, can a tourniquet hurt? Like some people think, well, I don't know what to do.
Right.
So would you say apply it anyway?
Sure. And that's a great question. My answer to that is, how bad is the wound? If it is arterial bleeding and the blood is squirting like a partial amputation, I would try and do that wound packing first. And if that doesn't work, go ahead and put a tourniquet on. And usually what I tell people is, if you think you need it, go ahead and put it on. When EMS gets there, they'll just take it off. Not a big deal. And a lot of people are scared with legality issues, and the Good Samaritan law will cover people with Stop the Bleed like we do with CPR as well too.
Yeah, and that's a great point is sometimes people just don't know what to do, or they're afraid to get involved if they see somebody with an injury. So I don't know the statistics, but I could imagine that a lot of deaths that are caused by injuries probably have to do with bleeding
Very
out.
much
We hear
so.
people saying bleeding out. So stopping that bleed is the key to save yourself enough minutes for the EMS to get there and start treating.
Very much so. So one of the things I do is I have this great example where I have different bags of IV fluid, and I ask the students how much blood does a typical adult have, and they say about 5 liters, which is about 5 to 6. Then I hold up an IV bag, which is a liter, and I say, this is how much blood a person can lose. But a liter of blood is how much a person can lose before they start going into shock. And that could be 2-3 seconds if it's a major artery. So, and I teach a lot of bullying education in the schools, and something I teach the kids is if you see something, you need to say something. But with Stop the Bleed, I say if you see something, you need to do something. Yeah. And that could be direct pressure, that could be wound packing, that could be putting that tourniquet on as well too, and getting that bleeding under control.
Yeah, and so when you are applying a tourniquet, talk about where to put that tourniquet.
Sure, that's a great question.
Over the wound.
Correct, exactly. So what I usually do is I tell people is we need to get the person, we need to be able to see the wound, and we need to expose the wound. We never put a tourniquet over clothes because we know that the clothes can actually cause a tourniquet to move. We never apply a tourniquet on a joint, and we always go 2 to 3 inches above the wound as well too. And the reason why is people have this misconception that when there's an amputation, the person is going to be bleeding out a lot, and they will for probably about a minute or so until the brain knows there's a problem. Then all the vessels constrict and they suck back in. And another reason why I want to go 2 to 3 inches above the wound, unfortunately, if that body part has to be amputated, the trauma surgeons or the orthopedic surgeons have some great, nice, healthy tissue to make a nice stump for prosthesis as well too. And I think something is really important that a lot of people have a problem with, and even when I teach EMT students is we need to make sure when we come up on a situation that scene is safe, and we look at chest and belly first, because a lot of people are really concerned with arms and legs. And in our world today, we can live without arms and legs. They can be replaced very easily. It's just those organs in that chest and belly that can't be replaced.
And you bring up a good point, because sometimes people, a tourniquet is typically for an injury to one of your extremities,
exactly,
an arm or leg.
exactly.
If you've got a stomach wound,
then we can do wound
tourniquet.
packing is probably the best thing with that, or like a gunshot wound to the upper chest. That's where we use that piece of plastic and we tape it down on the entrance wound and exit wound. And you bring up a good point, because a lot of people think that there's always an entrance wound, but we need to remember there could be an exit wound as well too. So when I teach the class, example I say is, you need to ask the person, if you can, how many shots they heard. Because if they hear 6, you need to look for 12 wounds. You may not have 12 wounds. You need to look to see if you do have those wounds as well too, to match what they heard.
Yeah, and you know, we're talking about some gunshots and things like that, but this training, this class is,
it can be for anything. It could be for farmers, because I grew up on a farm. This is harvest season. Combine injuries are a big issue as well too. Yeah. Somebody could get their hand caught in a baler as well too, and cause some traumatic injuries to that as well too. So it can be used anywhere. And I'm just a big fan that everybody should have a Stop the Bleed kit in their vehicle. I personally have one in my personal vehicle. In our health department vehicles, we have them as well too.
So talk about the kit. What's in a Stop the Bleed kit?
Sure.
And how does somebody get one?
Sure, and that's a great question. There's some commercial kits out that you can buy, and when I teach the Stop the Bleed class, I teach if you want to make your own Stop the Bleed kit. So of course we have our tourniquet, and usually the tourniquet's recommended as a cat tourniquet. I know that's what you carry as a cat tourniquet. Then we have our gloves. Then we have things to pack the wound with as well too. So it's pretty easy to find what needs to be in a Stop the Bleed kit. So there's multiple commercial kits out, or you can make your own as well too.
And so Stop the Bleed training is free. Am I right?
It is.
It's free. And so it's for anybody. Sometimes people think, well, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a firefighter, not a police officer, but I run a daycare, or I just have kids around.
That's perfectly fine. So the majority of my community classes that I do is just for community members. That I have a lot of people this time of year that are going out to cut down firewood. So they'll come in, they're like, hey, is it good that I attach a tourniquet to my chainsaw? I'm like, of course, because you just never know. And I think the course is really good, but here's kind of how I teach it is I kind of recommend for high school students, because some of the stuff for like our middle school and littler kids, maybe just a little too much for them to handle with the pictures and things. So we do it in the schools as well too. So great example, I teach this in some of the sports med class and in the high school school as well too, so those students can get their certification.
So let's just go through a brief thing here. Let's say you pull up on a car accident,
Right.
and somebody in the car is bleeding.
Okay.
Let's kind of go step by step through the checklist you should be going through in your head as you're helping this person.
Sure. So number one, again, as an EMS person, we always talk about making sure the scene is safe, because I don't want to be that victim as well too. Whip out my cell phone, call 911 and put it on speakerphone so the dispatchers can walk you through stuff if you need it. Then you're going to do your ABCs just like you would if you're going to do CPR on somebody, make sure they have an airway, breathing, and a pulse. And if they don't, you need to really address those first. But if they are, they're alert oriented, all that type of stuff, then you need to try and find where that wound is. And a lot of people have a hard time with this because you need to look at everything, because a lot of times our clothes hide a lot of stuff as well too. So we just need to make sure that we look for everything and find the wound and just decide, is it something where direct pressure is going to work? Or do I need to do wound packing, or do I need to go right to a tourniquet? Then I think it's really important is after we get that bleeding under control, we reassess them every 5 minutes to make sure that, we did this wound packing, it's not working. So do we add more, or do we go ahead and put a tourniquet on? So I think that's really important. And we're pretty lucky here in Indiana, in my world, that we have law enforcement and EMS very accessible, but some of our rural communities where it may take a little bit longer to get EMS or law enforcement there, you may need to be with that patient a little bit longer and just keep reassessing them and trying to figure out, is this working, or do I need to do something else as well too?
And where can people go? I know within Hamilton County, and then let's also say they're outside of Hamilton County. Where can they go to
Sure, and that's a great question. So you can actually go to the Stop the Bleed website, and there's a list of tons of courses where people can register as well too. Again, I do it every month at our office, or I pair up with other agencies. Like I'm doing a class the end of the month at the Trinity Free Clinic as well too. So we do them with throughout the county as well.
Great. And so we have about 3 minutes left, and I know we could talk a lot more about this. So, but there's also another program in the Hamilton County you want to bring up.
So I'm very fortunate to be able to offer free Narcan for individuals. If you're not familiar with what Narcan it's a drug that we give people who've overdosed on an opiate, either accidental overdose, or we know individuals who are being made to go into recovery sometimes aren't ready. So after they come out of recovery, they start using again. So Narcan is the drug that we give to hopefully get them back to where they need to be as well too. And we offer that class. We also give free Narcan as well too in the county as well.
And Narcan is one of those tools that is it's really not going to hurt anything.
Exactly.
So some people are like, well, I'm not sure what's happening
just
here.
give it to them. It's not going to hurt them. If there's no opiates in the person's body, there's not a big deal. If there is, what's going to happen is we're going to either hopefully get them to start breathing again, or we're going to put them into an automatic withdrawal. And that's something that we've already called 911. So law enforcement and EMS will be there as well to help out.
Yeah, so certainly a lot of resources available, and you can find more at the Hamilton County Health Department's website. You can also find a phone number there, and if you're curious about these programs or any information that Jim's talked about, I'm certain if you give them a call, they'd be happy to answer your questions.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to help.
Yeah, and so just real quick as we kind of go back, because we talk about Stop the Bleed, and one thing I wanted to talk about on that was there's not always a lot of blood. I've been places where I see a gunshot wound with maybe one drop of blood.
Correct. And that's the reason why you need to look. Because you have to look really well. And something that a lot of people joke when I teach Stop the Bleed is I'm a big person. Again, this is an EMS person, means you got to get the person naked. You need to look for things, because a great example, somebody could have gotten shot in the chest and it could have ricocheted and came out the lower abdominal area as well too, or it could be a through and through where you have an entrance wound in the chest and X wound on the back as well too. And a lot of people have this misconception that if somebody gets stabbed or shot in the arm, the bullet is in the arm or the stab wound's in the arm. But what happens if it went through the chest wall as well too? And we have to make sure that we can look at everything. And a lot of people forget to look at the back as well too. Yeah. So it's just so important you look for everything.
So if you find somebody with an unknown injury, make sure
you need to look for everything.
If you're at home and somebody cuts their finger real bad, like I did this weekend doing a home project,
then you just worry about the finger and you're good. Exactly.
But, this Stop the Bleed is valuable for anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, uncle, or if you want to just take it for yourself, it's free.
Exactly.
It's a great resource, and you're going to learn how to potentially
And you'll get a
save
national
lives.
a certification from the College of Trauma Surgeons that says that you're certified in Stop the Bleed as well too. So it's pretty cool.
We'll certainly want to thank our guest, Jim Gender from the Hamilton County Health Department, for coming on today. A lot of good information. Looking forward to having him back because I think there's a lot of topics that we can cover. Certainly appreciate your time, sir.
You're quite welcome.
And we also want to thank Indiana State Police Alliance and Cops for Kids. Everybody buckle up and be safe.